What if your greatest fear was actually the key to your destiny? In the next few minutes, you'll discover how one man's crisis became the turning point for an entire nation, and why his story could change the way you face your own challenges. Before Moses became a legendary leader, he was a man running from his past, haunted by a single irreversible act. His life began in paradox. A Hebrew child hidden from death, rescued by Pharaoh's daughter, and raised as an Egyptian prince. He lived in two worlds, torn between the comfort of privilege and the pain of knowing his true people suffered as slaves. Moses' early years were filled with contradiction. He learned the language of the court, mastered the customs of Egypt, and was educated among the elite. Yet every day he saw the oppression of the Hebrews, his own blood forced into backbreaking labor under the relentless Egyptian sun. The cries of his people echoed in his heart, a constant reminder of the injustice he witnessed but felt powerless to change. The tension between who he was and who he was becoming grew unbearable, until one day it exploded in a moment of moral outrage. Seeing an Egyptian overseer beating a Hebrew slave, Moses intervened. His act of justice spiraled into violence, and he killed the Egyptian. Suddenly, the life of privilege he'd always known vanished. Moses became a fugitive, fleeing into the wilderness with nothing but guilt and questions. In exile, stripped of status and certainty, he became a shepherd, tending flocks far from the grandeur of Pharaoh's court. Each sunrise brought new doubts. Could he ever escape his past? Was there any purpose left for him? In obscurity, Moses learned humility, perseverance, and the value of quiet faith, never suspecting that the very skills and scars he gained in exile would prepare him for a destiny far greater than he could imagine. The burning bush. Years passed, and Moses' life settled into a rhythm of solitude and routine. The desert became his home, its silence both a comfort and a constant reminder of all he had lost. One day, while leading his flock to the far side of the wilderness, he saw something that defied explanation. A bush, engulfed in flames, yet not consumed. Drawn by awe and curiosity, Moses approached, only to hear a voice that shattered the silence. "Moses, Moses." The ground beneath him became sacred, and his ordinary world turned extraordinary. In that moment, the most unlikely of men was called to the most impossible of missions. God's command was clear yet overwhelming. Return to Egypt. Confront Pharaoh. Lead your people to freedom. Moses recoiled, his mind racing with doubts. He was no speaker, no hero, just a man with a troubled past and a quiet life. Why him? Why now? The voice persisted, offering signs, promises, and the assurance that Moses would never walk alone. The burning bush was more than a miracle. It was a challenge to see beyond fear and to trust in a purpose greater than himself. Every sense was heightened, the crackle of fire, the warmth of the light, the trembling of his hands as he listened to the divine call. Reluctantly, Moses accepted. With a staff in hand and a heart pounding with uncertainty, he left the safety of the desert for the dangers of Egypt. The fire that would not die became his guiding light, a reminder that sometimes the most unlikely people are chosen for the most impossible tasks. Each step back toward Egypt was heavy with memories and anxiety, but also with a growing sense of resolve. The journey ahead would test every limit, but Moses was no longer just a fugitive. He was a man on a mission, carrying the hopes of an entire people. The unthinkable confrontation. Returning to Egypt was a collision with the past. The palace that once sheltered Moses now stood as a fortress of oppression. Standing before Pharaoh, the most powerful ruler in the world, Moses delivered a message that shook the halls of power. "Let my people go." Pharaoh's laughter was cold, his heart unmoved. The stakes were life and death, and Moses knew that every word, every gesture, could mean disaster for his people. The familiar corridors now felt hostile, and every encounter with Pharaoh was a reminder of the power he was up against. The battle of wills began. Plague after plague descended on Egypt. Waters turned to blood, frogs swarmed the land, darkness blotted out the sun. Each sign was a blow to Pharaoh's pride, but also a test for Moses. The Israelites doubted, The Egyptians raged, and Moses himself was caught between obedience and fear. Why was deliverance so hard? Why did God allow the suffering to deepen before relief came? The answers were hidden, and Moses had to lead through the uncertainty, holding on to faith when everything else seemed to crumble. The pressure was relentless, and the cries of both the oppressed and the oppressors weighed heavily on his conscience. Yet with every setback, Moses' resolve hardened. He learned to listen, not just to God, but to the cries of his people and the fears of his own heart. Leadership was no longer about command. It was about compassion, resilience, and the willingness to stand alone. The confrontation with Pharaoh was more than a political struggle. It was a crucible where Moses' character was forged in the fires of adversity, shaping him into the leader Israel desperately needed. The courage to persist in the face of repeated rejection became the foundation of his legacy. The night of no return. The final plague was a night of terror and hope. As darkness fell, the Israelites marked their doors with lamb's blood, trusting in a promise they could barely understand. Cries of anguish echoed through Egypt, but in the homes of the Hebrews, anticipation and fear mingled in the air. Moses moved quietly among his people, urging them to be ready. Every instruction mattered. Every moment was charged with the weight of destiny. The tension was palpable. Each family gathered in silence, waiting for the sign that would mean freedom or disaster. At midnight, the unthinkable happened. Pharaoh, broken by grief, summoned Moses and demanded that the Israelites leave. The exodus began in haste, a nation on the move carrying only what they could hold. Behind them, the land of slavery receded. Ahead, the unknown beckoned. The journey was not just physical, it was a leap of faith, a step into a future shaped by hope and uncertainty. The fear of the unknown was real, but so was the hope that after generations of bondage, deliverance had finally come. As dawn broke, the magnitude of their escape became clear. Moses led a people transformed by crisis, bonded by shared suffering and newfound courage. The night of no return was a turning point, a moment when the impossible became reality. But freedom was only the beginning. The path ahead was uncharted, and every mile would demand new strength and deeper faith. The memory of that night would remain etched in their hearts, a reminder that sometimes the darkest moments precede the dawn of liberation. Between the sea and the sword. Freedom was short-lived. Pharaoh's army thundered in pursuit, trapping the Israelites between the Red Sea and certain death. Panic swept through the camp, doubt, anger, and fear threatened to unravel everything. The people turned on Moses, accusing him of leading them to destruction. In that moment, leadership meant standing firm when everyone else wanted to run. The pressure was immense, and Moses felt the weight of every life depending on his next move. With nowhere left to turn, Moses lifted his staff as God commanded. The sea split open, walls of water rising on either side, a path where none had existed before. The Israelites crossed on dry ground, every step a miracle, every breath a testament to faith under fire. Behind them, the waters crashed down, swallowing the Egyptian army and sealing their deliverance. The roar of the sea was both terrifying and exhilarating, a sound that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. On the far shore, relief gave way to awe. The impossible had happened, not because of Moses' strength, but because he dared to trust when all hope seemed lost. The Red Sea crossing was more than an escape. It was a revelation. In crisis, true leadership is not about having all the answers. It's about moving forward, even when the way is hidden. This defining moment would echo through generations as a symbol of faith overcoming fear. Songs of victory rose from the people, and for the first time, they saw themselves not as slaves, but as a nation set apart. The wilderness of doubt. The wilderness was a land of testing. Hunger, thirst, and exhaustion wore down the people's resolve. Grumbling replaced gratitude, and nostalgia for Egypt threatened to undo the journey. Moses faced relentless criticism. Every setback became a referendum on his leadership. The burden was heavy, and at times, Moses pleaded with God for relief, questioning why he had been chosen for such a thankless task. The desert's harshness exposed every weakness, both in the leader and the led. Yet in the wilderness, Moses discovered the power of humility and dependence. He learned to bring his frustrations, fears, and failures to God, modeling a leadership rooted in vulnerability rather than pride. When the people demanded water, Moses listened for God's guidance. When they hungered, he prayed for manna. Each provision was a reminder that leadership is not about control, but about trust and stewardship. The daily miracles bred from heaven, water from rocks, became lessons in faith for an entire generation. As days turned to years, the wilderness became a classroom. Moses grew in patience, empathy, and perseverance. He realized that leading in crisis meant serving others, even when misunderstood or unappreciated. The desert stripped away illusions of self-sufficiency, teaching both Moses and his people that survival depended on faith and community. The journey was slow, but every hardship was shaping them for the promise ahead, forging a new identity as God's people. Through every trial, Moses' relationship with God deepened and his leadership matured. The Covenant and the Golden Calf. At Mount Sinai, the journey reached a dramatic climax. Amid thunder and smoke, Moses ascended the mountain to meet with God, receiving the 10 Commandments, a covenant that would shape the identity of Israel for generations. The moment was sacred, filled with awe and responsibility. Yet while Moses communed with God, chaos erupted below. The people, impatient and afraid, crafted a golden calf, turning to idolatry in a moment of weakness. The contrast between the divine encounter above and the turmoil below was stark, revealing the fragility of faith. The betrayal was devastating. Moses descended the mountain to find the community in turmoil. His anger flared, but so did his compassion. He pleaded with God for mercy, risking everything to intercede for his people. The greatest test of leadership is not in moments of victory, but in the face of disappointment and failure. Moses' willingness to forgive, to stand in the gap, revealed the depth of his character. The process of restoring trust was long and painful, but it was also redemptive. This scene marked a new beginning. The law was restored, the covenant renewed, and Moses emerged not just as a lawgiver, but as a servant leader, one who bore the burdens of others and pointed them toward hope. The journey was far from over, but Moses had become the leader his people needed, shaped by crisis, humility, and unwavering faith. The lessons of Sinai would become the foundation for a new society, built on justice, compassion, and the presence of God. The legacy of leadership. Years passed and the wilderness journey became a lifetime. Moses faced rebellion, setbacks, and moments of profound loneliness. Yet he never abandoned his calling. He continued to lead, to teach, and to pray for his people, even when they doubted or resisted. The cost was high. Moses would glimpse the promised land from afar, but never enter it himself. The weight of leadership was heavy, but so was the satisfaction of seeing a new generation rise with hope. In his final days, Moses' legacy became clear. He passed the mantle to Joshua, blessing the next generation and urging them to remain faithful. His life was a testament to perseverance, resilience, and the courage to serve others above self. The journey had been filled with twists and turns, but every challenge had a purpose, every crisis a lesson. Moses' story endures because it speaks to anyone who has ever faced uncertainty, fear, or failure. It reminds us that true leadership is not about perfection, but about persistence and hope. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Join our community as we continue to explore the lessons of faith, resilience, and leadership that still matter today. Moses' legacy lives on, challenging us to rise in our own moments of crisis and to lead with courage, compassion, and unwavering faith.